Hi everyone, welcome back to the Worsted channel. I'm Emma and this is my little corner of YouTube where I share all of my yarny related crafts, which mostly includes knitting and crochet. And now it's a literal corner because I rearranged my space and now I have a corner built out of my room, which I am loving so far. So this episode is a very exciting one for me because, well, first, what I am doing my 2023 knitting slash crochet plans and goals. And this is really exciting because last year was my first full year knitting and crochet, but I definitely entered the year not super confident in my skills or just the projects I was taking on were exciting, but they weren't super complicated or higher level, I guess. So, but towards the end of this year, I definitely took on a lot more challenging projects. And my skills have just increased so much. So I'm so excited for this year. I feel like the world really is my oyster when it comes to knitting and crochet, and taking on more projects for this year. So, just a brief note on what I'm wearing to start off with. I am wearing my finished Juniper Cowl, which you guys will all see more details of in my podcast next week. So, if you want to see that and hear more about how I made it, subscribe down below and you'll get a notification for when that goes live. But we'll just jump right in to my plans. So, I watch a ton of Nitty Natty, which you probably know if you have seen any of my other videos. So I kind of took a page out of her book, um, and like really wrote everything down and tried to organize it before I started planning. So this is what I have for my plans. So I started first by just listing all of my current WIPs, like hibernating ones, literally everything. So I have now 7 current WIPs because I had the Juniper Cowl listed on here. So I have 8 current WIPs, and I just kind of wrote if they have a deadline, I wrote that down, or if there's something I think I'm going to frog, I wrote that down. So, and my Good Willow test knit, which I've been working on a lot since finishing this, and that's due February 10th. So that one does have a deadline. Juniper Cowl, I just wanted to get that done in the month of January, and here I am, it's already done. Um, Alpenglow, I want to go back to after I finish my Good Willow. Uh, my temperature blanket is going to start being my at-home project, and so I didn't do a 2023 temperature blanket. I got engaged around Valentine's Day last year, so I started my temperature blanket on that date. So mine will be going to Valentine's Day this year. I'm currently in June on my temperature blanket, so if I want to have it done anywhere near the 1 year out mark, I'm gonna have to get moving on that one. So that's definitely going to become a priority project once I finish the Good Willow also. Because it would be really cool for 1 year since we've gotten engaged, and slash Valentine's Day present, give that to my fiance and myself because I really want it. I also have a cabled blanket that I'm making for my grandma. Which not super big rush. She has a birthday in July and then there's Christmas. So I kind of have 2 points halfway through the year where I could potentially have that as a goal to finish that by. I have a leaf stitch baby blanket, which I'm not sure if I'm going to keep. I don't even know if I have enough yarn to finish it. I have the Despite shawl, which I also think I'm going to frog and do a different shawl project with the yarn for that. And then I have my cargo sweater, which will be priority after my Alpenglow. So it's kind of where I'm at with my current project. So with frogging 2 of those, I'd be down to 5 overall WIPs, 2 of which are blankets, and 3 sweaters. So big projects, which can be overwhelming, but I'm not thinking too hard about it, and only one of them has an actual deadline, so not too bad. So then after that, I kind of went through and made like my first quarter plans because I think most of those WIPs are going to take me at least through the first quarter. So for January, which is this month, I'm filming this on January 11th also. So I still have most of the month left. And my Good Willow, my Juniper Cowl, which I already finished. And I want to finish the third panel of my temperature blanket, which I'm currently about halfway through. And I think I'm very much on pace to get all three of those things down. I was a little bit worried about my Good Willow because I hadn't been making too much progress on it. Um, but the past couple days I've gotten a ton done and I'm almost through the trickiest part on it. So I can see the end in sight now, which I couldn't see before. February I have on here my Alpenglow and my temperature blanket. And then March I have Cargill and uh finishing my current ball for my crocheted cable blanket. And then, as a side note, casting on travel projects is needed. I don't currently have one. So, on that, I have like my DRK everyday socks for myself, muscle burrows, or vanilla socks for my fiance. So, that's just kind of what I'm dragging in from 2022 over to 2023. So, now is the fun part of my goals and making plans for 2023 of things I want to do. So, for my goals, I have three main goals. Um, and it's really cool because now it's not quite as much of like learning oriented. One of them is learning oriented, but the other two aren't. And I feel like last year, all of my goals were learning oriented because I was still so new to the craft. I was still picking up so many skills. So, my first goal is to balance knitting and crochet more. I feel like there was two very distinct time frames in my year last year where the first half was all crochet and then the second half was all knitting. And it's just partially because of like the first half of the year I was way more comfortable with crochet and I was taking on more challenging things with that. And I finally challenged myself with knitting, started getting comfortable and wanted to challenge myself more with knitting. So it's just like what was exciting to me at that time. But now that I kind of built strong foundations in both, I want to sort of mix and match my projects a little bit more. I don't know if I'll always have like one knit, one crochet project on hand, but something in that realm. I've pretty much always had a crochet project going, but they've always been like blankets. So having more accessible projects, I guess, is my first goal. My second is to organize my yarn stash and donate some stuff. I have a lot of like cheaper acrylic and like cotton yarn from when I first started learning, and I didn't know too much about fiber or didn't know if the hobby was going to stick. So I just didn't want to invest too much money into the craft. So I definitely want to destash a bit. As you can see, I already kind of started with my little corner setup and just kind of get yarn that I love. Um, and not overwhelming myself because I'm still so new and I feel like now is the time to really build that good foundation of a stash and not overwhelm myself in the long run. So definitely want to keep on top of stash and on top of scraps. So that's sort of my second goal. And that one's also very inspired by Nitty Natty's year long um, stash reduction or like getting rid of her stash. So and then the last is my sort of skills goal. So I want to learn three new techniques, and I've already kind of outlined the techniques. And then next, when I go into projects, you'll kind of see all of those techniques um, shown there. So this is just like one of my favorite things about knitting and crochet is learning new techniques and challenging myself to like take on projects I wouldn't feel comfortable picking up right away and like doing some of the mental things that go with learning new things. So the first is crochet stranded color work. Absolutely love doing knitted color work and like I said, I feel like I kind of dissed on crochet a lot early on. Like, I don't like how it looks in garments and blah, blah, blah. But after starting my stripy granny blanket and this Juniper Cowl, which were both fingering weight crochet projects, I definitely could see where I would like fingering weight crochet garments. I still don't know if I really like heavier weight garments because crochet stitches end up being so thick, and I just don't like having all that weight on me when I wear something. So, yes, so crochet stranded colorwork, I would likely do either like a fingering or a sport weight for that. And I'm thinking of doing a sweater. I'll get into that in a minute. The next is brioche, and this one is one I really want to challenge myself with because um, I've been kind of avoiding the Harning brioche, mainly because I do a Norwegian style purl, so I don't bring my yarn in front. And from the tutorials I've watched in brioche, that's a very important part is like bringing your yarn in front instead of just pushing your needle um, to push the yarn in front. So that's one that I'm very interested to learn and challenge myself with. And I have a brioche project on my Make 9. So I'll get to that in a second as well. And then the last is lace. And this is just because I have done very minimal lace. There was a little bit of lace in my wild knit tee where like literally there was just an eyelet. That's all it was. Um, I think that's the only thing I've done with lace for knitting. So it's definitely something I want to learn more. I have another big project with that on my list. So I guess now you know all of my goals. Now I can go into the project. So I did make a little Make 9, and all of these are projects that are not current WIPs. Um, so just 9 other projects I want to make. Um, I don't know if all of them are actually going to happen. Most of them are kind of big, so we shall see. But the first is a crochet colorwork sweater. I've been seeing a lot of people recently on Instagram that have these beautiful crochet colorwork yoke sweaters. So I think if I did something like that, or if it was a yoke sweater, I'd be really interested in that. I do have current front runners for patterns, but I didn't want to do a specific pattern because to me, the whole point is like having this concept, and I might change on the pattern um, when I actually make it. Because if I make this in December, it's going to be such a different. My interests are going to be so different. Patterns might have come out, so I just did concepts for it. I make that. But the pattern that I'm most interested in making for this right now is the the Eira Sweater by Courtney Clark, and it's this beautiful like diamond colorwork pattern, and it's all crochet. This is actually a DK weight pattern, which is probably the thickest I would want to go for a crochet pattern, but I have a bunch of others. I went through and I saved a bunch of favorites. So if you want to look at kind of what I'm thinking for the new year, you can go look through my favorites on Ravelry. My username is Worsted Willow. So the second project I have is an all over cable sweater. Um, one thing I've learned this past year is I don't really like cables. I love how cables look, but the actual knitting of them is not quite my jam. So my Goodwill test knit is actually partially an all over cable. Like it's all over cable, but it's not exactly what I was had in mind when I like told myself I wanted to do an all over cable sweater. Um, but I think it's definitely helping me mentally prepare for doing something like that. My current front runner for that one is the Billie Pullover by Sorry Nordlund. I just really want to make like one of those beautiful classic like Aran worsted weight Irish Scottish cabled sweaters, and this one I think really embodies that. And I've made a Sorry Northland pattern before and really enjoyed making it. So, and I love the honeycomb stitch or cabled stitch pattern that's on the front. So that is my current front runner there. I do want to do the WestKnits MKAL again. I know a lot of people after this year's were kind of iffy on doing it again. So this past year was my first year doing it, but it was really stressful, especially at first, and I had no idea if I was going to like my end product, but at the end I did love it, and it also was just such a process knit for me, which I feel like I tend to do product knits, not process knits. So I really like that, and it definitely challenged me and made me knit something outside of my comfort zone, knit something I definitely would not have chosen as a pattern if I had just been looking around. So I really enjoyed it, and I do want to do Stephen West FCAL again next year. The next one is a cozy cardigan. I have a few like bulky weight cardigans that I did not knit but just had from before I started knitting. And so one of my goals is to knit a cozy cardigan for me to wear around the house. So I can donate my old worn down cardigans that are not super good quality. So I have two um cardigans that are really kind of in the running for this. The first is the Oxbow Cardigan by Andrea Mowry. I really love the texture on this and it looks super warm and cozy. And then the other one is a crochet one and it's the Kima Cardi by Tony Lipsy. So just kind of depending on where I'm at, if I want to do crochet or knit and what I sort of want. The Kima Cardi would be more similar to what I currently wear. The Oxbow is more of like a dressed up version, but yeah, I'm still kind of undecided on that one. So, and then my fifth item I want to make is a knit dress. Um, I had bought like a knit sweater dress for all my Christmas parties this year, and I wore it to like everything. So I think it would just be so cool to make my own knit dress to wear to like holiday parties, weddings, things like that. My current favorite is the Dressilicious by Pickled Knits. Um, And I feel like so if you've seen my Luna tee, that's just kind of like I love that outline ribbed pattern on clothing. I have so much clothing store bought and handmade that have that has that ribbed pattern. So like having it in this full dress is just absolutely gorgeous. Like I love it. So that's my current front runner. I also really like the Seaside Scallop dress by Knititude. Uh, Yeah, and that one's got a almost off the shoulder sort of look, and I really like that one. That one's probably more of like a classy, um, like holiday dress, where the other one's more of like a it's more fitted and things like that. So number 6 is the Harlow Hat by Andrea Mowry, and this would be my brioche pattern. I thought about doing something more like a brioche shawl or something like that, but I don't want to overwhelm myself with brioche, especially if it ends up being a technique I don't really like, and I think just a really squishy, warm hat would be the perfect place to start. I really like what Knitting Natty did with hers, where she did one of the colors as a mohair, and then the other color was more of a normal yarn. So that might be something I look into doing, just make a really fuzzy, warm hat. Not entirely sure, but that's my brioche project. Um, 7 is color work socks. This has been something I've been wanting to do for a really long time, but color work on small circumferences kind of scares me. Um, so I've been avoiding it. But I think if I have the right 9-inch circular, could do color work. I just really don't want to do color work on DPNs or Magic Loop. So we'll see about that one. My current favorite for that is the Lumme Socks by Sari Norland, which I didn't know they have, but I knit the Lumme sweater this past year, so I think it would be really cute to have matching colorwork socks to my sweater. So that's another smaller project, but one that I am a little nervous about making. So number 8 is a granny square project. When I first started crochet, I did not like granny squares at all. But I think with the granny stitch blanket and then just they're so popular and I keep seeing them in different ways. They've really grown on me and I think I'm ready to make a granny square project. My probably number one favorite at this point is the Stevie Bum Bag, which is like a crossbody bag that's made from granny squares, and that one looks like it would be a really quick project. If I decided I wanted to make like a full sweater, or larger project with granny squares, I wouldn't do a blanket, but I like the Corrine Cardi by Knit Collage or the Joan Granny Sweater by Tony Lipsy are my two favorite granny square sweaters. And then my last project is going to be a super special one to me, and that is either a wedding shawl or wrap. Um, so this would most likely be my lace project if I do a shawl. I'm kind of undecided between doing like a really intricate lace shawl or doing a. I saw Colibri by Joanna did a like George's wrap is what she called the pattern. She wore it to her wedding and it looks absolutely stunning. So I might do that. That one definitely looks a lot simpler. It is mohair knitted flat, which doesn't sound fun. Uh, but yeah, that's kind of my toss up of projects. I did barely start a lace shawl and I was a little bit overwhelmed by the charts. So we'll kind of see how that goes. Yeah. I think I'm leaning towards a lace shawl if I have the capacity to, but I don't know with classes starting again and wedding planning if that's something that I'll be able to fit into my schedule. I always make time for knitting, so I probably could. But yeah, so those are my 2023 making plans. And I'm so excited for all of these projects. I definitely like seeing a little bit of mix in there. I've been on a garment kick, so just doing some garments, but also kind of getting away from them, finishing some of those blankets that I've had around for over a year now. Just all very exciting. So let me know down below what you're most excited for knitting and learning in 2023. And I hope to see you in my podcast episode next week. It's number 10, so there may be a special surprise. See you guys next time.